Carmen, I'm so happy to have you here. I mean, we have had so many cool chats and we have built like a very nice friendship in this journey, and I'm very glad that we met when we were starting Looks, because you have been a great advisor to us. You're coming in with a lot of experience from having built CLOTHESfriends. So I just want to start with that. How do you get to build and start CLOTHESfriends?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. It's also has been an exciting journey for me so far to like see where you headed and how you started and how you grow. So for CLOTHESfriends, actually, it started already when I was studying back in the days of fashion journalism and media communication. I then just had the assignment for my kind of bachelor's thesis to create a concept for a marketing campaign. And I was like, okay, I think I might work on something that also makes sense to me, because I knew it was just for the books, or I will do it also to use it. And I always had this idea in mind that like there are so many clothes in our wardrobes, and I used to swap so many clothes with my sister or my mom as well. And then I was just like, okay, there should be a way that this is digitalized and available to everyone, because I'm sure everyone has a lot of clothes in their closet. So I was researching and saw there are like some similar concepts in the US, like Rent a Runway, and then nothing was available here and like in Europe and in Germany especially. So I set up this whole idea and I like did the whole marketing concept, but back then didn't really think about, okay, how would this work logistically and stuff. And then I was working more after my bachelor's thesis on it. I was started working at Harper's Bazaar, like did a lot of writing, was getting more into the fashion industry itself. And then I just saw more and more how extremely polluting this industry is. I saw this one documentary, The True Cost, who gave it all to me. And then I was like, okay, there are more than 1 billion clothes produced every year, and like half of them maybe make it to like consumers. So, and then I wanted to push it more, and I happened to meet up with a friend of mine who really encouraged me to like do a business plan, and then I should show him to him. And it ended up then also him being our first investor to give it a go, which also meant I had to quit my job at Harper's Bazaar, which was hard, but I was then thriving for it. And we started with a small testing round where we were just out about in Munich back then, asking people how they would deal with renting clothes. We set up a small landing page where they could rent out clothes from like myself, my co-founder, and our friends. So it was super basic, and it was back in Corona, and like people still rented. So we were like, okay, this is nice. And then we ended up meeting our developers and created the app out of it, and it went live then in April 21.
Amazing. That's great. And I loved how, you really started doing something that didn't scale, like Paul Graham says, of, doing manually, being in your own clothes. And I mean, for me, it's also interesting. How was that transition out of your job? It takes a lot of courage to start in. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, you had someone right there next to you. How big of an influence do you think that was in making that decision? And what's your recollection looking back?
Yeah, looking back, I think I was happy that I didn't had an idea of what was about to start, or like what it expected me, because like I always loved like being challenged. Also back in my job, I always loved to kind of take in something more on top that just make me practice more and just never being in my comfort zone. And then I was like, yeah, this is definitely a lot out of my comfort zone, but it was the only way that I could start this, because also from like the investors' perspective and like our advisors, I once said, if you really want to do this, you should put all your time in it. And it was definitely the right decision, because I wouldn't have time to do something on the side. Yeah. And I mean, it was so different, because suddenly every day was different, and I had so many new perspectives coming in, like setting up a company, fundraising, then like doing a first MVP, setting up a website and everything. It was totally new, but I loved it since day one, and I would never do it in a different way.
Amazing. Yeah, totally. I can definitely relate to it.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, looking back at my time at Deloitte, which was a great time, but you know, it's definitely, you gotta put all your soul into it, and that means, you know, taking that leap of faith into yourself. But one of the toughest things that I've encountered and that we have encountered when during the ideation period, especially as I did it here at Merantix and you know, as a founder in residence, is what's good enough, and what's a signal for you to say, okay, there is a case here, and we're going for it. If I understand correctly, you quit your job and you started doing the tests, correct?
Exactly, yes.
Do you remember what were those early signals, either in terms of numbers or qualitative, that basically indicated that you should continue?
Yes, yeah, good question. I mean, from like the quantitative perspective, when we saw that we could every week, like we had test runs every other weeks, so people could rent out clothes every other week. So every other week we also put new clothes on the website, like we announced it on Instagram. We did a lot of like social media also, like really telling our story, also our founder story and stuff. And we saw that every week we could increase the number of rentals, and we also could like collect a lot of feedback, because we were driving with our bikes around Munich, like really brought the clothes to them, asked them, why did you rent? What would you like to rent? To really like get qualitative feedback as well. And then like initially we wanted to do a website, and then when we met our developers and also had some like tech advisors back then, which also were like my friends from university, which was super fun. It was super fun to work on it. And then at some point we were like, okay, we need an app. It's not working with a website when you always have to log in again, and then you lose your rental periods. We really want to make it like an everyday usage that you rent your clothes. And then we also like asked people, would you like be rather on the website or on the app? We did lots of data collection, like via surveys on Instagram and stuff. And then at some point we were just like, okay, we hit this one number. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but for me it was always like, can we increase or is it like stabilizing at some point? But we could always increase it. So I was like, okay, if we then also make it available to a bigger crowd, then this increase should continue. And this was kind of the sign for us to go. And then once we like set up the app, we also wanted to go super fast and like launch it very fast. And we set it up in about 3 to 4 months, which for this whole complexity of having a rental calendar in your app that has to be like linked peer-to-peer, because we started really as a peer-to-peer platform. So we always had to think of both sides and then us in the middle. So it was super complex, but we still made it to launch it within 4 months. And of course we weren't happy with like this first MVP, but also had so many people telling me it will never be perfect, and if it's perfect, it's shit. So please like just go out and then iterate and get better along the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. You know, sometimes we spend a lot of time trying to find a benchmark, like a number to tell us what's good. But after this experience, after, you know, the last few years, there is really no one number. What you should aim at is exactly what you're describing, which is people pulling, you know, the product from you and you basically running out of capacity to serve them. Yeah. And, you know, when you're at that level, I think that's a best signal, you know. And then if it comes to the sheer number of people that are pulling from you, that's another question. How far can you go into tapping into more people?
Definitely.
But having a few, you know, pulling, that's how you start building incrementally.
I think that's even more valuable, especially in the beginning. And I think there is where we made, let's say, a learning, not a mistake. It's always a learning, right? But we went from like 0 to 100 too fast, like because we were launching the app and we did a huge kind of marketing campaign. And in hindsight, I think it would have better if we like started a bit slower and collect those first 100 super fans that are really, then you also know like who is your real target audience. You know it better, like comparing it if you go out and we tested like we had an influencer campaign back then, and we test like with different influencer groups and see, okay, who resonates best, to then see who is our actual like real target audience. But I think it would have been smarter to really have this small group of super fans, and then they will be spreading it for you. So here, I guess, it's always one or the other way. But in hindsight, I think it's just much more valuable if you have this really truthful number that is really relying to you and want to building it with you, and you have a close connection to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to, the road to get to those, super fans, and thinking about going beyond them, when we think of rental, it sounds like a very early concept in our society.
Yes.
And, my question now, it's like, where is that market today? Do you feel like, is it expanding? Is it still a small market? Did that influence on the success and the journey of CLOTHESfriends? Do you feel like you had a cap because the market was not ready?
Definitely. I mean, it's also, it's time to say this here in the podcast. That's why we are also stopped the rental case, because the market in Germany, in Europe, it's really, really small. It's very nichey, and also the business model itself is extremely tricky. So to really reach the unique economics that make sense in the long term is very hard. You also see it with concept in the US and in the UK, which are bigger but still like really struggling with profits is really hard. But especially like to make this business model work, it's tough, but it's doable. But you have to have a huge amount of rentals. And also you have to reach this price point of the product where it makes sense. So we eventually then also find we had those like super fans, and we had a lot of people always saying, yeah, it's a great idea and it makes so much sense. But the actual conversion, at some point it stopped and it just didn't increase anymore. And we did so many things, from like also adding the option to buy after the rental, because we also saw, okay, this is how we can encourage a conscious purchase. It's not like an impulse purchase anymore, but you test the product and then you buy it if you really want it, or you give it back. So this also helped. And then we also started to work more with brands. We then found, okay, we could also actually make this available to brands as a white label solution, so they could offer rental on their own platforms, which actually started to increase and the demand was more there. But then it was a lot of other regulations coming from the EU, which is super good, but which is more about transparency and also about other topics that rental itself cannot solve right now. So this was also like stagnizing. And then for us, it was really hard to then see, okay, it's too early for rental in Germany, and we can either wait until it's time, or we kill our biggest darling and see what else we can do to really help the fashion industry to be sustainable and like really be a player in this game for the long run, and to make an impact.
Yeah, no, and it's a bit weird also to me when I hear you describe this, the fact that we have a whole generation that cares about the environment, cares about their impact in it. And I'm talking about the generation Z that is coming, and the generation Alpha also cares about it. So much that I think one of the first generations that are prioritizing secondhand. And I was just reading this morning that 2 in 5 items in their closet are secondhand. We've also done interviews with our user base, and we found smaller groups in this generation that, or in this audience, that are really not buying any clothes new. They are just buying secondhand. They are not going to fast fashion. They are buying secondhand. So, and it is growing at a pace 5 times more than the the retail in the whole space. So, how do you see resale and rent compare to each other? What could make rent grow faster, unlock and grow that small market that you described?
Yeah, I think what's the main difference is the actual behavior has to change, and the mindset of owning your clothes is also changing slowly. But with like secondhand, you can go into a store or you can get it online. You buy it, you get it, and you keep it. It's the same like buying new stuff, like from the process, right? And rental is coming with like another pre-action. So you have to select it, you have to select the days, you have to select how long do I want to keep it. Then you eventually have to grab it in town, or you have to wait it until it's delivered. Then it might not fit you. This is always something that people are scared about, which is really sometimes weird to me, because also when you buy something, of course, you're not really sure. And we also offer them sometimes, to rent 2 pieces to kind of see, but still this is something, I rented and then it doesn't fit. Like this doesn't make sense. Yeah. Same from a purchase for me, but anyway, and then you also have to give it back. And I have to give it back at some point, and it's not mine. And this I think is also the difference in populations, which we see like in the US and in Europe. This owning mentality is still so much more present here, I feel like, and also this fear of making something or like breaking something, and then you have to pay for it, and you have to think about so much more. And I think in other areas in this world, it's like, and then it's for the moment, and then I have a great outfit, and then whatever happens I will find out then, but I won't care before that. And that's such a different mentality. I think also Europe is so much behind in this kind of rental evolvement. So I think this is a thing that we just have to raise the awareness more. That's also what we aim to do right now, and it's also I think what you do amazingly with looks, like that you make it more accessible to the people and you educate them, but on a very subtle way, which I think is key right now to really raise this awareness. And then the other point is of course also the whole logistics part, and to make it available anywhere. So secondhand, you can, I mean, in Berlin, like every other store has a secondhand corner, or they're only secondhand stores. And you would also have to have this for rental, and totally believe that at some point every store will have a little rental corner, because there is hardly any brand or any store that wouldn't have rentable clothes. So like a little more special pieces or winter jackets. Why should I buy a winter jacket when I can wear it in summer? So it's like, it makes so much sense, because we don't wear much, like most of our clothes all year long, except like the basics, which of course this is also something I would buy myself, but everything else, why should I buy it when I can have constant variation? And we also saw that with like this argument of, you have constant variation, you can like mix and match and stuff, you be so much more light on trends because you can test out so many things. This was always an argument which was like working. But then at the end, this is the last point, I just think it's not working right now. People are then thinking, but if I rent something for then $20 and then I would buy it in H&M for $25, it's better. And then if you ask this person, but will you wear it? Like how many times will you wear it? Like, I will. But I mean, if I can buy it, why should I rent it? And this extremely low price point, especially from fast fashion, is also stopping rental so much, because it makes clothes, like the value is dropping extremely. You don't really see the value of clothes, where they come from, and it's just this price point which has to increase for fast fashion, which will hopefully soon. But this is also something that would, I think, accelerate the rise of rental a lot.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And it's, as I hear you speak, I think of maybe a very silly example that is not related to fashion at all. But I was trying to think what else we had a high barrier to rent, and now the barrier is very low. And I'm thinking of cars and car sharing.
Same, yeah.
Right? So I think, if we would have renting a car on an agency is cheaper than taking a share now, for sure. But share now has a convenience that you can just take it and go, right?
And it's everywhere.
And it's everywhere. it's more expensive if you really think about it, especially in the longer rides. If you have to rent it for 2 days, it's way more expensive than an agency. But I think it's a similar feeling. It's about making it accessible and easy for people to use it, and I think that's where technology can play a very interesting role.
Definitely.
I think what you said about stores having like a rental segment, I think that would definitely contribute to it, and that brings the accessibility part. Are there any other areas of how you see technology, making it more accessible, making it cheaper or easier to make a decision, or generally where you see technology going in the space?
I mean, especially in rental, I guess, of course, there is a huge potential on the consumer side to make it more accessible to them. So, for example, whenever I'm in Berlin, I will have a platform where I see like all rental stores or secondhand stores, and then I just, make it accessible, and also based on my previous purchases or rentals, I can see like where is the best place to go, because of course I want to save time, I want to be efficient, and I want to get what I want. So like bring it to them in a very personalized way. And I think personalization and tech and like data and what we can do today with AI can help a lot in this regard. And then on a more like brand related side, I think it will help a lot. And we also already started that when we started to create this, the white label solution is that you can plan actually based on what you're producing, but also what products you still have in stock, what products would rent out better, because there are obviously products like a green dress which would rent out better than a black dress, because the black dress we would rather buy because it's a basic and you will like wear it often, and then the green dress would be perfect to rent. And then also based on the trends, maybe also how the consumers are interacting on the website, you can see okay what prices would make sense, and like having a very personalized a very optimized rental offer within your offers or within your products. This is something where I see a lot of potential. And then also in the logistics part, because this is another thing which often is forgotten, but that like rental is a whole new logistics setup that you have to build. And I think here also like connecting brands to logistic partners, like having it very smartly connected. There has to be something that is not like just for one brand. It has to be an offer or like a solution that works for different brands, that is just adaptable faster. So it's not tailored to certain players, but really offered on a wide range.
Do you think that the way for rental to now, grow and get more mainstream is to maybe start with the brand, starts with the companies instead of starting with the peer-to-peer model consumer? Do I get that correctly?
Yes, like for now, definitely. I mean, it makes more sense also you can scale faster, and the brands are currently the ones that have the power to, bring it to the customers. And at the same time, they won't do it when customers are not really demanding it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think if they would bring it then also to the stores, it would be broader accessible. It would accelerate faster. But this is also what we saw when we were talking with so many brands. And I hope this will change in the long run, because rental makes sense for a brand in the long run, because you can monetize a product much longer. That's also where technology comes in. You can like plan your production phase, and you can plan, okay, if this piece will be a rental piece, of course I will also produce it less, so it also reduces waste and like overproduction. Like it has so much potential, but you really have to think long term as a brand. And since brand right now especially in this year are like already so much in a crisis, they just think short term, how can I make more money and like save time this year, because I cannot think long term, because maybe in 1 year I will be gone. So this is kind of the mindset that they have. And if it then slowly starts to change and things are getting a bit more calm, I think brands will also realize this potential and will change. But still, for me, like seeing this potential already now, I feel like, okay, then until the brands get the hang of it, we have to activate people and we have to raise the awareness still. But I think there is a huge potential once brands are also accelerating that, but still also having certain platforms which are bigger, like Vestiaire Collective has also raised the whole, I think, awareness for secondhand massively. And still you find the brands also offering secondhand first on their web.
Yeah, I think that, brands need an incentive or like a little bit of a push to see that there is so much more beyond selling new products.
Definitely.
And I mean, of course, it makes sense and it's understandable that that's the approach that all of the brands focus on, because it has been the main way to trigger revenue on their end, and
exactly.
It makes sense that is prioritized and they continue on it. But if we find ways to unlock other business models, which is also the main thesis that we have at Looks, at having the data of what's on your closet across a community, basically opens up the door for many other things beyond buying new. It makes swapping easier. It makes secondhand selling broader to an audience that was not thinking of selling. So I agree with you a lot in that, and maybe that push will come from the consumer. I agree that secondhand resale platforms have played a big role. What do you think of other models that come to mind? Of course, I already mentioned swapping. Is swapping something that you said that you used to do this with your sister and your mom?
Yes, like swapping, I think it will. I would love if this accelerates also on a broader scale, but I think for me swapping is a bit more like renting. So you just swap it with either rental provider or with other people in a peer-to-peer model. So yeah, because you give it back and you take something new, or you don't take something new, and you can give your own clothes or you take the clothes from other people. Another concept which I think is now getting more and more awareness or coming up more is the whole repairing, which I find interesting because also a lot of brands are offering it, and they are really, I wonder, like sometimes if it's just a marketing tool to we're now repairing and having a repairing service, because from a price point, I mean, hours go in it, you don't sell something new, and they're like, okay, why aren't you renting? Because it would like make so much more sense. Like, of course repairing is a huge part, but when I then ask people, would you go to like repair your clothes, like nobody has actually really done it, because maybe it's also not accessible enough, or it's like they don't know really about it. But this is something I've been seeing also in UK with Save Your Wardrobe. They have been making like really accessible, making it cool, and I think this is also such a big thing that we have to focus on. You have to make it a hype, and also for rental, for repairing, for secondhand, you have to feel like, okay, I want to be with this movement. You want to be cool with the flow, and that's, I think, what they showed really nicely, how this can help to make it like an experience to repair. And then also people will go there, and like a swapping or renting event, which is like a huge fair. Of course, I want to go there, and maybe I won't rent something the first time, but maybe the second time. And that's, I think, what we also have to think about. Fashion should be fun and about expressing your personality, and we shouldn't, like, also since people are getting more aware of it, their fashion is bad and it's dirty, and of course it is, but we have the power and the potential to change it, and also showing the people that they actually really, if they change something on a daily basis, it helps. It's not, if I do something, it won't work, and it won't like change the big picture. Of course it won't in the first place, but in the long run, and if you talk to people, you really have a potential to change. And I think that's something so cool, and that's also something that we always wanted to show with our concept, that you can be part of the change. And also with Looks, I mean, you're inviting everyone to be part of it, and I think that's an
I think it would be fantastic to find ways to show people how their small steps contribute. Like, if you're, every time you wear something, you're basically maybe reducing your footprint in the world, because it's something that is being taken on to its full capacity, is not being thrown out. One idea that we sometimes play the teams with Looks is, what if whenever the more an item is passed on, the higher the value it gets.
That's also nice. I mean, it's the same a bit for secondhand. I think here's also where technology can play a huge part again, when you really can track the pieces, you know, where has it gone. Also, when it comes out from the producer, you can really track where has it gone. You can increase or decrease the value. You can see how many times has been repaired. And also here, I mean, people are talking about the potential of like putting it on a blockchain, and then also like having more transparency information about it as soon as it is produced, and then you can really track it, and also brands don't lose it. It's also even wasted potential if they just give it away and it gets traded, sold. That's also why I think brands are still like hesitant sometimes about all those concepts about secondhand. But still, I think here we should really think of how can we use the power of new technology ways to really accelerate also the traceability of clothes, because this is such a key thing in the whole circularity.
Yeah, and it has two components of it from my perspective. It has the value, the actual value component, which we can flip that in the industry, and you know, the more they use, the more you repair. Instead of decreasing the value, we could think of people increasing the value.
Definitely.
Because then there is a change in the attitude from consumers who value more something that has been, you know, pre-loved than something that is new. But we can also quantify that in, you know, a new purchase that you're preventing. So there is a direct impact on the environment.
I like that. Yeah.
And I also saw today a very interesting stat that I was not aware of, to be honest. And is that people and Gen Zers are looking into what's the resale value of an item. So before they make this new purchase, they think, okay, how much can I sell this for later? So there is an emotional component, but also an actual monetary component. And in this research that I saw, it's 82% of the Gen Zers that said this, which, you know, it's super interesting, because not all of the brands, I would dare to say only a handful of brands have this, you know, this feature in the checkout to show you how much you could resell this.
And also what I love about this is it urges brands to produce on higher quality levels, right? So if I buy like a t-shirt for €5, I'm sure it's not the best quality, and I would maybe resell it for €2. But if it's like a good value and it decreases and it stays, of course you can resell it for a higher price. So I really love that maybe Gen Zers, without even knowing it, they urge brands to increase the quality, like next to €1.
I mean, this is probably too crazy what I'm about to say, but if you make each piece of clothing an NFT or something like that, then the brand still, it's part of that business transaction in the lifetime of the brand. So if we wanna, you know, there is, of course, we cannot exclude the brands. They need to make money. So I think probably the way in which this works is that somehow they're still part of that process, and that's their incentive to enable this change in the mindset. But yeah, I don't know how close are we of making a t-shirt an NFT.
Yeah, I mean it's not far away, and you've seen brands like doing it also, of course, for a lot of like hype reasons, but also I think we won't wear clothes just on the skin in the future anyway. So we'll wear digital products, and so you could already, like, for brands right now, I think the sooner you start experimenting and you start getting kind of used to it and finding new ways, and just it's the time to play on those things. And at some point you have to jump on the train and be ready. So the earlier you start and see what consumers are valuing, I think.
Absolutely. I feel like, you know, resale, secondhand, and renting, it is, you know, I told you this shortly before we started recording. I feel there is a stigma with used clothes, and what are your thoughts on it? Did you feel this from the people you were chatting with? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's funny also, as you said, that there's a huge generational difference here. So Gen Zers are definitely not having that stigma that much than maybe people that are, let's say, more millennials, so end of 20s, start of 30s. I think it's different. And also I still have some friends that are saying, yeah, but those vintage stores, they're they're smelling so weird and it's, I don't want to wear this. And I'm like, but there's so many, first of all, like great examples. And then at some points I always ask them, like, how many people do you think have worn a t-shirt that you try when you go to Zara? Like, it's not new. Like, people have worn it and it's coming from people who have made it with their hands. Like, if somebody has worn it, what makes it bad? And then most of the time they cannot answer the question. So I hope this rings then something in their mindsets. But then it's also maybe because some people are just maybe a bit cautious about new things. Also here, I think, once you make it cool and once you make it easy and you see other people doing it, and then maybe once you go in there and you see, okay, maybe this is a store that resonates with me, it's also smelling good and like the clothes look nice. And once you kind of bring those stores or those opportunities closer to the people that they're maybe closer to the things or the habits they have right now, I think they will slowly transition more into it. But I definitely think there is still this kind of stigma. It is changing slowly, but we still have a long way to go until like it's normal that you wear secondhand clothes.
There is a big awareness, kind of like need of like, you know, this is not dirty, this is not, you know, it's just fabric that has been used, but it's perfectly usable again. And I can definitely think of, you know, people in my family on the older generation who would, you know, look at it and be like, well, I'd rather use something new. And it's just that thing that you just cannot explain verbally of why do you have such a resistance to it. And
also I feel like when I also, especially like with older generations, or especially sometimes also men, I don't want to categorize this, but I had this conversation with a lot of more like male people, and I always say, yeah, you know, I wear my clothes so long and I hardly ever buy something new, so I don't I don't have to buy secondhand, because when I buy it, I mean, I wear it for a long time. And they're like, yeah, but what is holding you back still from secondhand? Because also when you wear it for a longer time, it's fine. And they are actually the people who are valuing the long durance and the good quality of a piece. So I'm always feeling, okay, these people should get the hang of it, that secondhand makes sense because you can reuse it, but still this newness, as you said, what is new? I think we have to rethink this term of something new. Is it just when it's new for you, or does it have to come fresh out of the store or wherever you get it from? And just because we have been used to it, it's okay. But also people used to check in hotels, and now they're living at flats and apartments of other people, which definitely have been used before. And also here, I feel like people are giving away their flats, and they're like their closest or their most valuable place where they feel at home. Why shouldn't they give away their clothes?
And they're using a used pillowcase, which, you know, I'm not gonna go into that topic.
No.
Carmen, you know, what are I want to talk a bit about Berlin, Germany. How do you see the fashion tech space right now in Germany and Berlin? Where can we improve?
I think it's super exciting. Also, there have been a lot of new players coming up, and also, I mean, the startup space and the opportunities you get in Berlin are amazing. And yet, I think there are many players kind of working a bit on their own. So I would hope, or I really hope to encourage more people like you and me, and just more people in that space to connect and, you know, to share experiences and to kind of build a little alley of fashion tech enthusiasts to really change this whole industry, or to also get more feedback also from the market. And I feel there are some great players and also growing, and also in terms of like investment and fundraising, they're getting more attention. So I think it's coming, but still slowly. And also on a European level, I think there is slowly but surely more kind of interconnection coming up with more like communities around fashion tech. But also here, I think we would have a lot of space to improve. So I'm curious to also like see where we are in 1 year, and maybe have found some more members for a little alley.
Yeah, and it's also the fact that it's still relatively small makes it also approachable. And I think compared to other startup ecosystems, it feels like, I think approachable is the right word. It feels like you can reach out to people and relatively easily.
Definitely. I feel like also when you look at like big startup conferences or like startup activities, that like you always have the food space, the B2B SaaS, and it's like ed tech, all those spaces which are just logical that they're there, and then it's maybe fashion tech, and it's like really, really small. And I think this is why also the fashion industry in Germany and in the DACH region, it's very low. And I would like put the argument out that maybe just Germany is not valuing the fashion industry that much, because we're not like a fashion country. Like the US is like definitely celebrating fashion a lot more, or the UK and Italy, France. It's like it's different from their fashion history.
Yeah.
So I think this is also why Germany hasn't really got the actual potential of the fashion industry, and also what big impact it has. I mean, it's like 10% of our global greenhouse gas emissions, and it's such a huge industry. It's $1 billion industry that you just have to fix, and we need the power also from like everyone that we can get from the government and like startup ecosystems. So that's also why I hope there will be more also resonance within other startup ecosystems. And I think it's coming, but of course we have to
agree. That's what we're doing.
Definitely.
Finally, and to wrap everything up, what are you working on at the moment? What are your next steps?
Yeah, good question. I mean, since I also said like a bit earlier in the podcast, we stopped the rental activity of CLOTHEsfriends, and this is also then it happened just recently, like 2 or 3 months ago, where we stopped it. And also it was kind of took some time to wrap all things up. And now, as I said, I mean, I cannot stop working on this topic. It's just stopping the renting part has opened my whole scope bigger again, to see what is actually doable and where do I see myself in this industry. And currently we kind of rethinking CLOTHEsfriends as a community space. So we want to build a platform right now that is providing content and also possibilities where to find sustainable and circular solutions. And we want to really test this whole co-creation potential where everyone can contribute to this platform. So it's currently in the ideation phase, and on parallel, I joined another startup just to also, they're coming from the community building and personal branding actually. So this is another topic where I could dive a lot more deeper into, but I think also here, putting the people in the fashion industry into the center can help us a lot to accelerate this movement. And that's what we're kindly doing with them for CLOTHEsfriends. And also I took a new role at their in their team, which helps me a lot to like learn and really improve my skills a bit as well, and see just other areas of startup ecosystems, which helps me a lot. And yeah, it's not getting any boring. And also having the chats with you really is amazing to see where you are right now, and how fast you grow, and also how you develop the whole app.
No, it has been our pleasure to have you close by. As you say, the ecosystem is small, so we gotta support each other, and you have been a great support. I mean, we have a very, very cool team, but we always are in search for this input that people have done it, that have been on the fashion tech space for some time, bring. And yeah, I can totally vouch for that new team that you are with now, because I've had a couple interactions with the founders of
Notus is great, and they're really also pushing us to see things from another angle. And I think this helps me a lot sometimes, because of course working on this idea for 2 years also brings you into kind of a tunnel mode, because you sometimes just don't have time to look right and left. And now I'm really, that's also why I want to take this time to explore what is possible, also seeing like what different players are doing, talking a lot, like getting feedback from the market and learning from the learnings I mentioned from like back in the day. So I think
amazing. Well, Carmen, I wish you all the best in this
Thank you.
new stage. You're staying close with us. We're not letting you go. We're
Always.
not letting you go anywhere. You're staying close to Lux as you have been for this time. Thank you for sitting with me. It was a lovely chat as always.
Thank you so much for the time and for having me. It was really a great chat.
Amazing.
Wow.